Hello and welcome back to another episode of the OS Academy. My name's Zetrot, and today we're going to go over some more time-lapse mapping. In our previous episode, we went over the insane mode of Sound of My Dreams. Today, we're going to be looking at creating the hard mode. So let's get started. Just like before, we're going to go ahead and set our base first. Now, I know some people might not set their bases all crazy like I have here, and prefer it to be a more systematic set. And there are also mappers that don't set out all their base notes beforehand, and they map it piece by piece. Both of these ways are equally effective in creating a beat map. But this is the way I've learned how to create maps, and I probably won't change that anytime soon. So, as we're getting through here, we're about 50% of the note place creation. Once that's done, you'll see that I start to go back and add in new combos. So let's just give this a little bit of a moment to catch up here, and we'll continue from there. Okay, and now to rewind it, now that we've got all these combos set up, you could look through, and as you can see, I am adding a new combo. It's usually okay to add a new combo every 2 major stanzas. And the major stanzas, while it might be hard to see with the speed up, those are the big white ticks starting. So it's the start of your stanza that you'd be setting these to. So every 2 of those, you can new combo. It's kind of been around for a long time in terms like that, but you'll notice it makes the combos look a lot more consistent. You'll also notice from the previous difficulty, I'm not using nearly as many hit objects. And this is because, in fact, it is a hard difficulty. These changes have also changed in circle size, approach rate, and overall difficulty. These all have been adjusted slightly to lower it down to what you would consider a hard. And when making your hards, you do have to remember, it's not always important to go in and map as much of the song as possible. In hards, you want to leave out a little bit more, yet still give it a full feeling. Sliders really help you in this department too. As you see, I start this map out by creating some sliders. And that's basically a good way to get started with a hard, in my opinion. Another thing you'll notice is I do not change the tick rate. Sometimes you will see mappers that adjust the tick rate depending on the difficulty because they don't want to hear the ticks or tangs of easier or slower slider velocity, because you'll get a tick anytime your slider crosses over a red note, or if it's set the right way, a blue note. They're just there for that reason, to keep the rhythm consistent. As you can see, I'm making some basic slider patterns here. As I get into more of the bulk of the map, the very beginning there is looking pretty good. I apologize for the hiccup there. Alright, and you'll see I use a horizontal flip here to make sure those look good. And I break the distance spacing just a little bit to make that look cleaner. It's not enough of a change in the distance spacing for it to warrant any kind of issues. If it's something small and minute like that, you should be just fine being able to get away with that. As you watch here, I stay very close to slider patterns here, and I'm using large sliders to cover larger parts of the map. That way it still feels as if the map is full and not missing too much. That's one of the main keys when mapping easies and normals, and it can happen with hards as well. You have to create an environment in where the player is not going to get too bored, but it's not going to be too challenging for them to overcome the obstacles. And a lot of people will really prefer it if, there's actually sounds and everything's going on, just as if it was insane, but slightly toned down. The hit sounds in this difficulty pretty much mimic its insane counterpart, but it's just the beat placements that are different, and the fact that they're very few, if not any, triples used in this difficulty. When we get to the normal later on, down the line, you'll notice that when creating a normal, I will even use less of circles and more sliders. The slider to circle velocity variable will change drastically as I continue to map for this diff set. This is actually pretty cool though. I get to watch this myself along with you guys as it's being done here, and I've tried with the new 60 frames, and I also found a way to speed it down just slightly to where it's still quick enough to get a lot of information passed through at one time, yet very easy for you to see and understand as well. And for those that might be wondering why I break distance snapping on notes like that, when you listen to the song itself, you can kind of hear where larger spacing's almost okay. It's kind of a hard thing to explain, but if you play enough, once you get to a point, it'll stop being so much as, oh, this circle should be here, or hey, it feels like it should be here. The audio cues that you give will definitely help you when creating your maps, because you don't have to do everything by the books. You don't have to set everything to a specific distance snap. Nothing like that has to be done. We're about 50% into the map creation process here. As you see, I'm tightening up a few more sliders, as I want this to be more simplistic than its previous mode. Also, one thing you could do when creating your maps, you can always check on its appropriate star level rating before even finishing it. Like, for example, if I were to go into test right now, I could test and see how many stars was that. I think during one of these tests, I noticed that the stars are only like 2 something, and in order to fix that without so much as breaking the flow that you've created for the map, and instead of calling it what it's not, like some people just say, oh, go ahead and call it a normal. I don't feel that in any way when I was creating this was a normal what I had intended in mind. So I will continue to keep it with hard, and I will do things that you yourself can do as well to make sure that you have proper hard scaling difficulty to your insane. One of these things is during the song's progression, you can actively make the map harder and harder towards the end. This is something that's been seen with Elite Beat Agents, Os Takade Oendan, and even Osu here. You can see that people will create maps starting them off easy and bringing into a climactic finish for a hard. Well, for a hard challenge near the end. But that also will increase the star rating as well. So just using a bit more complex patterns and adding a few extra jumps that you might not normally have used will do wonders for increasing that star rating to make it more of a map that you're wanting it to fit. Here I used a simple vertical flip and horizontal flip to get that same type of energy that came from the previous pattern, as I felt it was really good, and just have it slightly repeat. Now you can overuse horizontal flip, vertical flip. It is very possible, but it also depends on how you market it, I guess. Market's probably not the best word, but it's like how you put it out there. If your map has a bunch of really awesome intuitive patterns that are really great, and they really leave a long-lasting impression on the player, there's not going to be too much of an issue if you decide to repeat said pattern. One of the more played maps of mine that I have created, La Di Da, if I do remember correctly, used quite a bit of the copy flip structure thing that we see me using right now even. And that map is probably my most played map in my entire library. I think it's standing at like 5 million, or very close to 5 million, if not. But just remember, when creating hard, you still want it to be difficult, but you don't want it to be too difficult. And my little bit of a heads up for the way I map hards, and I'm not saying this has to be done of everyone, but my insanes will have 1-4 triples or 1-6 streams. You know, insane, I feel that's where streams are most dominant. For hards, I try to focus more on patterns and beat placement, and not so much on finger tapping speed. So it's still tricky, but it's not nearly as tricky as its insane counterpart due to the fact that the steps were made to make sure that the same things that were causing it to be so hard for the insane are not present in the hard. As you can see there, I also did another horizontal flip, but I changed a little bit of it to create a little bit of a different type of play. Okay, so as we're getting in close to the end here, I do believe I took one of the patterns I really enjoyed. Yeah, it's this pattern right here. I really enjoyed creating this pattern, and I really liked what it did for the map. As you see me reworking it here, I'm going to end up copy flipping this, but instead of just doing like a simple copy paste and reverting it, I actually managed to flip it completely different, the entire pattern completely different from what it was, by using I think it was a 90-degree angle. So in other words, everything gets flipped on its sides. But in order to do that, obviously there's going to be some places that, you know, kind of fall outside of the gameplay field. And when that happens, the only thing you really can do at that point is just adjust it and work with it. So see here, you see me copying that whole section there, and then I'm going to delete this section and then paste it, and then I flip it left and right. Now, as it is right there, it is not very good in terms of playability, because there's a lot of stuff going off the deep end and a lot of stuff going off different ways. So what I did to fix this is I slightly adjusted the way these patterns work, and you'll see me doing that right now. Instead of them having like a dome shape, they're actually just going to slide upwards here. And this is taking the same pattern and making something completely different out of it. And then at the very end there, I readjust those as well to make sure that they've played differently with their new axis set. And for all the other stuff, we went ahead and just got it all lined up. And then I finished it off with a 4-hit slider to a spin. Now, let's go ahead and enjoy the full map in its entire completion. Enjoy!